Thank you, Marwan, and thanks to the J Street people for having me here. And now let me tell you where the Arab Peace Initiative really came from. All of this basically started after 9/11. February every year, the Davos World Economic Forum is held in Davos, Switzerland. But in the wake of 9/11 and in honor of New York City, in February 2002, late January, 2002, the Davos organizers decided to honor New York City and hold Davos at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York. And I attended. And this was, I say, early 2002. 9/11 was just 4 months old. And I was still thinking about the Middle East back then. And was trying to figure out a way, just in my own little universe, to see if we could move the dime post 9/11. So I was standing in the lobby of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel and bumped into an old friend of mine, Andre Azoulay, who some of you may know, a wonderful man who happens to be Jewish Moroccan, advisor to then King of Morocco. And back in those days, I was in the habit of writing columns as phony letters from American presidents to different leaders around the world. And I'd written a whole series from President Clinton to Hosni Mubarak, which were a fun little series, and I'd written a bunch to Hafez al-Assad. And I was just musing with Andre that I was thinking of writing a letter from President Bush. It was hard doing Bush, having done Clinton, but I was thinking of writing a letter from President Bush to the Arab League. And basically saying, in the wake of 9/11, why don't we really try to push the dime forward? Why doesn't the entire Arab League get together and propose full peace with Israel in return for full withdrawal, and stating specifically, including trade, diplomatic relations, tourism, and the like. Full peace for full withdrawal. We've already said, 242 and 338 out there, but why not actually flesh this thing out in the name of the entire Arab League, for all the reasons Marwan said, to really give the Palestinians the kind of backing they would need to make this concrete and really to appeal to Israelis. So Andre said, that's a great idea, you should do that. So I thought about it, I was wandering around the lobby, and I bumped into the head of the Arab League, Amr Moussa. I just flew in from New Zealand a few hours ago, so I'm a little bit shaky. And I said, Amr, let's have coffee. So we went into the coffee shop of the Waldorf, and I said, I'm thinking of writing this letter from Bush to the Arab League, and you're the head of the Arab League. What do you think of that? And he said, you should do that. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. The head of the Arab League actually thinks this is a good idea. So the next week, I went back to the office and I wrote a letter from George Bush addressed to the head of the Arab League, saying, gentlemen, you should all get together and put forward a concrete peace proposal that would offer full peace for full withdrawal, trade, tourism, diplomatic relations, everything. A week later, I got a visa to Saudi Arabia. I had been very hard on the Saudis after 9/11. For the fact that the 19 of the hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. And the Saudis were then in a mode of sort of reaching out to the world, and they invited me to Saudi Arabia. And when I got there, the now Saudi ambassador, Adel al-Jubeir, was back home working for King Abdullah. And I had an amazing set of meetings while I was there, but I was always hoping for an interview with the big man himself, then Crown Prince King Abdullah, because King Fahd at the time was really incapacitated. And about a week after I got there, I got the phone call that we were going to go see King Abdullah that night out at his horse ranch outside of Riyadh. And Adil and I went out there in a car at midnight. King worked basically all night and slept a lot of the day. And got there at midnight, and he had a huge diwan kind of going, a huge buffet. And I was invited to attend the buffet, and I went and met with the king in this public room, and he said, let's have a private talk later. And he and I, we had dinner, sat next to each other, and all the princes and other friends of the family were there, all men, of course. And after dinner, I sat around for another 2 hours, and about 2:30 in the morning, I believe, Adil and I were summoned into the king's quarters. He was there by himself, and the three of us, he sat behind his little desk. I sat on the other side with a notebook, and Adil translated. And, well, let me just read you the story that I wrote, just the top 2 paragraphs, because this basically tells it all. Earlier this month I wrote, this is dated February 17th, 2002. Earlier this month I wrote a column suggesting that the 22 members of the Arab League at their summit in Beirut on March 27th and 28th make a simple, clear-cut proposal to Israel to break the Israeli-Palestinian impasse in return for a total withdrawal by Israel to the June 4, 1967 lines and the establishment of a Palestinian state. The 22 members of the Arab League would offer Israel full diplomatic relations, normalized trade and security guarantees, full withdrawal in accord with UN Resolution 242 for full peace between Israel and the entire Arab world. Why not? I'm currently in Saudi Arabia on a visit, part of the Saudi opening to try to explain themselves better to the world in light of the fact that 15 Saudis, 15, not 19, were involved in September 11 attacks. So I took the opportunity of a dinner with Saudi Arabia's crown prince and de facto ruler Abdullah bin Abdulaziz Al Saud to try out the idea of this Arab League proposal. I knew that Jordan, Morocco, and some key Arab League officials had been talking about this idea in private, but had not dared to broach it publicly until one of the big boys, Saudi Arabia or Egypt, took the lead. After I laid out this idea to the crown prince, he looked at me with mock astonishment and said, "Have you broken into my desk?" "No," I said, wondering what he was talking about. "The reason I ask," he said, "is that this is exactly the idea I had in mind. Full withdrawal from the occupied territories in accord with UN resolutions, including in Jerusalem, for full normalization of relations. I have drafted a speech along these lines. My thinking was to deliver it before the Arab Summit and try to mobilize the entire Arab world behind it. The speech is written and it's in my desk. But I changed my mind about delivering it when Ariel Sharon took the violence and the oppression to an unprecedented level. But I tell you," the Crown Prince added, "if I were to pick up the phone now and ask someone to read you the speech, you will find it virtually identical to what you're talking about. I wanted to find a way to make clear to the Israeli people that the Arabs don't reject or despise them. But the Arab people do reject what their leadership is now doing to the Palestinians, which is inhumane and oppressive. And I thought of this as a possible signal to the Israeli people." "Well," I said, "I'm glad to know that Saudi Arabia was thinking along these lines. But so many times in the past we've heard from Arab leaders that they had just been about to do this or that, but that Ariel Sharon or some other Israeli leader had gotten in the way. After a while," I told him, "it's hard to take it seriously." So I asked, what if Mr. Sharon and the Palestinians agreed to a ceasefire before the Arab Summit? "Let me say to you," said the king, "that the speech is written and it's still in my drawer." So then we went around for about 2 hours, kind of fleshing all that out. And I got up to leave, and I said, I'd like to put all this on the record. The whole interview was off the record. I said, "I'd like to put all this on the record." He said, "No, I'm not comfortable. Use it off the record. Use it on background." I said, no, I'm not going to do that. If you want this out, you have to put your name on it." So he said, "Let me think about it." So I left about 4:30 in the morning. I went back to my hotel, went to bed, thought this is really very exciting. And I got up around noon, and I'm sleeping now Saudi time, And Adel calls me at the hotel and says, go with it. You can use whatever you want. Put it all on the record. So I typed up all the quotes exactly. I've been working in the Middle East now 2002, so 24 years. And I typed up all the quotes exactly and sent them over to Adel to double check. Because I was not going to be caught out in a position where someone said they were misquoted. Born at night, not last night. The other thing I told the Saudis was that I'm going to make this my Sunday column, but I'm going to stay here till Monday or Tuesday to see how you run it in Arabic on the Saudi press agency. And if you screw me, I have a Wednesday column. So I wrote it up. This was like a Wednesday or Thursday. I wrote it all up, and now I got to wait till Sunday for this thing to come out. And in between, I went to see several of the king's brothers and half-brothers, including Prince Nayef, the interior minister. And it was clear to me that he hadn't told them about this. So I didn't say anything. Now, my column moves about Saturday night around 8 p.m., a Sunday column. And Sunday night, I got a call from one of the king's aides who said, do you have Ari Fleischer's phone number? And I said, don't you have an embassy in Washington? And I was told, we're not using the embassy on this one. Very interesting. In fact, if you Google the phrase Bandar, Ambassador Bandar, and Arab Abdullah Peace Initiative, I think it's still true, you will find 0 matches. So this was an initiative by the king, all by himself. Now remember, he's crown prince also. This was a bit of a coup d'etat within the Saudi ruling structure. He was also making a bid for leadership here. This wasn't just a peace initiative. There was something very much inside the family going on as well. But in any event, I did stick around till Monday. And the SPA, Saudi Press Agency, put out the whole column, the whole interview, every word perfect. Exactly the way the king had said it and the way I had written it. And after that, all hell kind of broke loose. Went all over, reverberated all over the Arab world. My view was I completely bowed out of it. After that, I did not go to the Beirut summit in March because my attitude was this would only go so far as the Saudis and the Arab world pushed it. I gave exactly one interview after that, and that was to Nachum Barnea of Yediot Ahronot, because I wanted Israelis to know directly from me how real this was. And then I would simply pick up the story with where Marwan put it. Basically, the Israeli government kind of ignored it. Basically, the Bush administration kind of ignored it. Basically, the Arab world adopted it and then faxed it to the Israelis. They would have emailed it if they could have, but they just faxed it. And no one in Israel and the leadership there said, let's send a delegation somewhere in the Arab world. Let's offer to take this directly. Unfortunately, no one in the Arab world said, let's invite an Israeli delegation. Let's offer to deliver this in person. And so this great initiative, which I think is the only foundation for an Israeli-Palestinian peace settlement, was very courageously, I think, put out there by Crown Prince Abdullah at the time. Unfortunately, it's just been kind of floating around. It's a bit of an orphan even though it has so many fathers. And I think it could be revived in a second. I've, at different points, urged the Saudis to freshen it up and invite a delegation from Israel directly to Riyadh to have it put in their hands. I even suggested that King Abdullah, I wrote a column that he should offer to fly to Jerusalem, pray in Al-Aqsa Mosque, and ask to deliver it before the Knesset and the Israeli and the Palestinian Parliament in Ramallah. Unfortunately, none of this advice has been heeded. So we are where we are. It's still out there. I think the logic of it is as strong as ever. But it's kind of an orphan. Thank you very much.